Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Paul's Garage. In this episode we're going to hit the EH again. If you've been watching the episodes on the EH, you'll know that I've replaced all the brake master cylinders, the rubber lines, all that sort of stuff. The only thing I didn't replace was the master cylinder. And I noticed that the brake fluid was going down. I checked everything. Checked all the wheel cylinders, chased all the lines, checked all the rubber, all the connections, everything else. Couldn't find anything. Then I did notice just a tiny little leak that was in the car, which obviously come from the master cylinder. So we'll fix that in this episode. And the other thing that we've got to do is the water pump. Unfortunately, I didn't see the water pump leaking when I had the radiator out and everything. It would have been a lot easier job to do, but so I've ordered a new water pump. I've got a new water pump, and we'll put that on there in this episode too. One thing, bit of a disclaimer that I should say is that brakes being an integral part of your safety of your car, of your stopping power. You shouldn't really do brakes yourself. They should be done by a licensed mechanic or a brake mechanic. However, I've been doing them for, I don't know for how long, 30, 40 years. So I'm not afraid to tackle my own brakes. But like I said, they should be done by a licensed mechanic. All right, enough of that. We'll get cracking. What do you reckon, Tess? Eh? Get cracking? Get the job done? Jess will keep an eye on me again. Right, so as I said in the intro, we've got two things to replace: the water pump and the master cylinder, brake master cylinder. I guess with a car that has probably sat around and not had a great deal of maintenance done on it over the years, you've got to expect this. If you remember watching through some of the other videos that I did on this car, the brakes were in appalling condition. So I guess this is the last component to replace. I haven't bought a replacement yet. I wanted to have a look inside the master cylinder just to see whether I needed a rebuild kit or get a new one. Rebuild kit is about $40. A new one's around about 100. I'm leaning towards just putting a new one on there. But anyway, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to remove the brake fluid out of the reservoir. Yeah, just keep in mind that brake fluid will take your paint off as quick as look at it. It is water soluble, so always have a pot of water close by so that you wash it down if need be. I've got a rag around there, so I'm going to use my vacuum here to empty that out. Then I'll pull the reservoir bottle off, undo the main feed, and I think it's a 9/16 or something to remove the two bolts. Even though that's new brake fluid that's in that container, don't reuse it. It's not worth the, probably 50 cents worth of brake fluid that's in there. Just dispose of it properly and use new stuff. Anyway, so we'll hopefully I'll be able to suck all this fluid out of here. It's working well. See how this goes. Getting this bottle off. We may have to get a bit more out of there. With the new master cylinder, it comes with everything that you need. It comes with a new bottle, new lid, and everything, you know, basically just ready to bolt straight on. So when you remove the main feed line, make sure you use the proper brake line spanners, brake nut spanners. If you use just a normal open ender, chances are you're going to burst something. Once you've got it loose, you can use just a normal open ender, but certainly to first get it undone, you want to be using the correct size spanner, the correct brake line spanner. And that's a, because I can't see that, 716. Now that I've got it loose, it's a lot easier once you've got it loose to put a regular spanner on it. And keep in mind that fluid is going to leak out of here. Like that. Not too bad. So with a little bit of luck, all I'll have to do is bench bleed the master cylinder, but I won't have to bleed the brakes all over again. I just saw some brake fluid leak out from the back of this as I was undoing that bolt, which definitely means that there was fluid leaking out of the plunger end of it. Okay, so that's your plunger coming off your pedal, and there's our master cylinder right there. So what I do is I'll take that over to the bench. I'm going to pull that apart on the bench and just see how much of a mess it is inside. All right, so we've got our nice new master cylinder, and I brought it down here to the workshop. Now I got this from Kingswood Country, Rare Spares, and it's made by Protex. It's exactly the same as the one that I've just pulled out, and I wanted to have a look before I bought it. I wanted to have a look at where it was made, and they're made in America, so that's a lot better than being made in some other Asian country where it might not last so long. So I guess there's a lot of this sort of stuff floating around on the old Yang tanks. So what we're going to do is we're going to bleed it. So ideally, if you had a fitting that would go in here, you would put a fitting in here and then run a plastic line
around into the reservoir, fill the reservoir up and pump it. Unfortunately, I don't have a fitting or a line that's going to go in there, so I'm just going to bleed it similar to what you would when you're doing brakes. Is I'm going to put my finger over that hole, and then I'll pump it. When I release it, I'll seal it up with my finger so it's not dragging air back. Now, the reason why you want to fill this up with fluid before you install it on your car is that is all full of air. So if you just put that on your car, fill it up with brake fluid, you've got a whole heap of air in your system, you're going to have to go around and bleed everything. So currently the brake line in the car is still full where it meets here. So once this is full, I'll take it straight over to the car, bolt that on, then bolt it back onto the car, and should be, being the optimal word there, should be right to go. So I'll put this in the bench now. I'll fill it up with brake fluid, and we just use a large screwdriver, Phillips head screwdriver, and it can go in there, and it can be, you just use that to push it, to push the fluid through. So unfortunately, like I said, I don't have a fitting that'll fit in there, so I'm hoping that the old finger over the hole trick will work. So we'll put her in the vise and we'll get cracking on it. So that's got a little rubber cap in it, so I'll leave that rubber cap in for the moment while I fill this up with brake fluid. Good. I don't know whether it would or wouldn't actually gravity feed. Not too sure. Now take my little cap out. So if I push that now, that's going to expel all the air out of there. Then I'll put my finger over the hole. Once I release that, it's going to suck in the brake fluid. So we'll see how that goes. Oh, there it comes. So you can see that was full. It's now down to that mark there. So now we've got brake fluid coming out through here, and it's leaking out quite well. So that's something to put under there. So should get a container and put down here on the floor to catch that excess. So that now is bled. That whole cylinder there is now full of brake fluid. Let's put that rubber cap back in there and make sure that we've got plenty of fluid in it. So we don't want any air bubbles. Well, that was good. Now brake fluid. It's alright, I've got plenty more up in the shed. So what I'll do now is I'll take that up, bolt that onto the firewall, hook up our line, and we should be right. Well, we're back over in the shed. First thing I'm going to do is that little dust seal. I'm going to put that on the actuating rod. So that sits nicely there. One thing I should have mentioned previously when we took that off is you have to disconnect your brake. You have to disconnect your battery, because as soon as you take that off, this rod pops out. And as soon as that rod pops out, your brake lights come on. So disconnect your battery first to try and save it a bit.
And we've got our master cylinder here. What I'll do is I'll take this little rubber cap off from there. Our line is still full of fluid. I'll just check that. Put the line in there. Hopefully this has been made properly and it'll screw straight up. Which apparently it will. There's brake fluid leaking out of here, which is a good sign because that's keeping all that. That means there's no air in there and it's just the brake fluid coming out. I'm just doing this up with a normal open ender at the moment. Once I've got the master cylinder bolted up to the firewall, then I'll put the brake line spanner on it and nip it up properly. You don't want to do it with just a normal spanner because it's good chance it will burr it. And this is where it gets a little bit difficult because there's not a great deal of room here. Now, I did spray the bolt and the nut hole with some WD. So try to make it a bit easier to put that in there to do them up. Now once you've got those bolts in, you can tie them up. A fairly long thread on them. They're a 916. .916 close enough to 15 mil. So I haven't got a 916 in one of these ratchet ones, but I got a 15. Nice and tight. Let's top that up with a bit of fluid. And with the EH, they recommend .3. They say that you shouldn't be able to overheat these brakes with brake fluid with .3. It's what's recommended. I've actually got .4 in there because that's the whole system's been done on .4. So I've still got this to go in. It goes in there on the cap, the little seal. But I'm not going to put that in there until I've finished bleeding the brakes. Now I don't know what's going to happen here. it's all done up. I need to nip that up a bit with the correct type of spanner. That way we won't burr it. Now what I'm going to do now, see if I've got brake pedal. So theoretically, the master cylinder's been bled. There's plenty of brake fluid in there, and the brake fluid was up to the top of the line when I connected them. I'm suspecting that I will have a bubble and I'm going to have to bleed it, but one pump on the brake pedal should tell me exactly what I need to do next. Beautiful. Beautiful. That's normal brake pedal. I probably will go and go down to that back brake over there and bleed them, just to make sure that all the air's out of it. So before I do that, the next job is the water pump. We'll get to that. So we'll get to taking off the fan first to do this water pump. Wished it had been leaking when I had the radiator out, but them's the brakes. Can do it with the radiator in, but it's a bit of a tight fit. So I'm using a set of miniatures just to loosen it, and then I've got a ratchet spanner to get them out. Now, with it being so close to the radiator, I like to get a bit of cardboard, stick it between the working area and the radiator core. That way I don't damage anything. So we'll get these, there's 4 bolts holding this on. We'll get these bolts out, get the fan off, get the fan belt off, and then drain the coolant and pull the water pump off. Hopefully everything will fit out between the working area and the radiator. So I've cheated here a little bit. I've already loosened off most of this stuff. I'll get this last bolt out here, excuse me, and pull the pulley and the fan belt off, and that'll give us good access to the water pump. Should be that right. So even when I've got the hand down there, I keep the cardboard in place, because even your hand can damage the radiator core. We just spread the love a little bit. That should. If your bloke was smart, he'd have a rag on that air cleaner so he doesn't scratch it after he painted it. That's the last bolt. So bring the cardboard up with the fan so it doesn't touch anything. Now there's our 4-blade fan. Same thing, keeping the cardboard in place so you don't damage anything. One pulley. And the fan belt. So that now gives me good access to get everything off. So the next thing I'm going to have to do is drain the engine and the coolant. So the next thing to do, of course, is to drain the coolant out. I've got a narrow tub which fits under the car without it having to go up on the hoist or anything like that. At least I hope it fits under there. Which it does. So we'll drain the coolant. I'm just going to pull a radiator hose off and let it drain, and then we can pull that nasty old leaking water pump out. So in reality, I think all I've got to do is pull this top hose off. That should drain enough coolant down to the water pump height. I bet you that's not all going into the container. I bet you I'm flooding half the floor. So I'm going to have to get the mop out. Heater hose off. Living out here, you certainly need a heater. Oh yes, made a lovely mess under the car. Oh! I got a sneaking feeling that I lost most of that coolant. It is all over the floor. I'm going to have to bring the hose in here and hose it off. I don't think I saved very much at all. Nah, saved bugger all. Oh well, you get that. Well, if I've got the correct water pump, there's only 3 bolts holding it on. And I've taken 3 bolts off. So let's just give that a little tap. There's more coolant. I'm glad I left the bucket under there, so there'd be more on the ground. So that water pump, the impeller and everything looks a little bit second-hand, so I'm glad we're doing that, getting that off. So that water pump, as I said, looks a little bit rusty, and it looks a little bit, you can see where the coolant has been leaking out over a period of time, but I never noticed it. But it's also got Celastic on it. I'm not a fan of Celastic, so I do use a gasket goo, but not Celastic. I use an aircraft glue. So yeah, I'll clean up the face of the water pump, of the face of the engine block there rather. I'm sure you guys don't want to see me bent over in there with a razor blade cleaning that up. And actually, I've got a little proper gasket thing. I'll use that. So yeah, that's due for the scrap heap, that one. And you can even see where it's all rusted and in here. It's all rusted and blocked for that where the bit goes through there for the heater. So anyway, I'll get all that cleaned up, and then I'll see you when I put it back on. I've got more coolant to clean up down here too, by the way. The bucket doesn't catch everything. So I've done a trial fit of the water pump. Fits beautifully, and then I've got my Permatex seal on there. It's on both sides of the gasket. Some people will say no, you shouldn't use that, and some people will say yeah, you should use this, or use silicone, or just put it on dry. I'm happy. I've always done it. Use Permatex, and I guess I'll always continue to use it. So whether you like it or not, it's on there. And I've just noticed something. Bugger, the attachment here for the heater hasn't been drilled out. So that'd be real handy. So now that I've got gasket goo all over it, I've got to go and drill that out. Great. Anyway, be back in a sec. All right, so that's drilled out now. I managed to do it upside down, so I didn't make a mess on any of the gasket or anything like that. I did notice that that it looked like it had been dropped when I turned it. It was sort of dragging a little bit, and I could see two marks which lined up, and I just had to move with two of the bends on the impeller. I just had to move two of those impellers just a tiny little bit where they were bent and just dragging on that. Now it's nice and free. So looks like somebody may have mishandled it slightly at some stage. All right, well, bung this sucker on, eh? So I put the bolts on the air cleaner there in the order that they came off, where they went, because there's one slightly longer one which is for the alternator bracket. This is a good little ratchet, this, for doing things like this, because obviously you can ratchet it, but also you can turn the handle, which does the same thing. So if you're in a spot where you can't move your ratchet around, just got to there and turn the handle. Works like a treat. Like that. Not as good as having one of the little battery ratchet things, but mine broke, so. Get them up just nice and easy, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over and check the manual and see if there's a torque setting for these. I like to do everything up to the factory torque settings if I can, and just about everything does have a torque setting. But anyway, that's all on and looking really good now. Put that back on there. So what I've got to do now, like I said, I'm just going to check those torque settings and see if there is a torque setting. Otherwise I'll just try and nip them all up by hand, you know, to the same tension. The same elbow click on each one, but I can't do. I've got to put the fan and everything back on, which is no drama. But I've got to go down the road and get some more coolant. Now, just a little bit of food for thought about coolant. I always use pre-mixed coolant. Now, the reason I do that is you can get your concentrated coolant, which you mix up to suit yourself, whether it's 50-50 or 25-75 or what have you. But if you're putting in tap water, it's full of fluoride and it's got iron in it and all this sort of stuff. So you have to buy de-ironed or demineralized water to do your mix your coolant up. However, if you buy pre-mixed coolant, just think all these companies like Penrite, Newlon, all these mobs, excuse me, they spend a lot of time, effort and money in getting the product right. So they're using the correct deionized
filtered water to mix up with their coolant. So if you buy a pre-mixed coolant, you know you're getting a 50-50 coolant and water mix, but you know you're getting the correct stuff. You don't have to worry about, you know, iron in the water or anything like that. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're buying coolant. Think about it and think about your coolant. It's most important, and think about the concentrate and the premix. Well, there you go, guys. That's another episode of Paul's Garage. Done and dusted. Tess was a great help, as you could well imagine. You like the new lounge here in the shed? It's a brand new lounge. Didn't cost me anything, but still, it's a brand new lounge, never been used. So I figured, what a better spot for it. But here in the shed, gives me somewhere comfortable to sit, have a bit of a snooze. Gives Tess somewhere to sit. She loves sitting up here. So anyway, that's it for this episode. Like, share, subscribe, do what you need to do, and we'll catch you next time on Paul's Garage. Thanks for watching. So I've never actually pulled one of these master cylinders apart myself before, but I noticed that there's no rubber boot on there. There's supposed to be a rubber boot around there. And it's also, you're going to need a pair of circlip pliers. Now I don't know whether you can actually, if I can get that in the light properly, I don't think I can, but there's rust and leaking fluid on that, which again sort of tells me that it's been leaking out of this back part. Now inside, I know inside these master cylinders there's a rod, there's a couple of caps and O-rings and a couple of springs. So like I said, if I can rebuild it, if it's rebuildable, I will do that. Otherwise I'll just buy the new one. Now to get that circlip out, you're going to need a pair of circlip pliers. I got two here. These ones here, which are on a spring, it's for removing that way, and these ones are for removing in the other direction and replacing them. So I'll use these ones, and we'll pull this thing apart and see what happens. There we go, one circlip out. So I always lay things on the bench the way that I take them off. So I'll lay them all out along this way, so that when I go to put it back together, they're all in sequential order. That's if I put it back together. It's still brake fluid. This is my old brake fluid container that I keep. Still brake fluid in there, so I'll just see if I can squirt some into this. When I say old brake fluid, that's exactly what I mean. I don't reuse that stuff. I dispose of it. A lot of your council tips and the like will take that sort of stuff. So we got the main plunger. This has come out. It's got an O-ring around the top there, which is it's an O-ring or it's a cap. I think it's a cap actually. It's extremely worn. Put that in there. Here comes our first cap. So remember that the hollow part of the cap went to the inside. There's your spring.
which went, it's got a bit of a taper on it, so this narrow end went towards this cap. Set on there like so. And I'm not 100% sure what exactly is up the other end there. Just going to wash this brake fluid off my hands and get a torch and have a look. So there's another big O-ring or something in there. There it is. Quite soft. That's pretty much all. There's a lot of rust around this area here. Which makes me think that I should just buy a new one. Inside the ball, the cylinder itself, it looks pretty good. Doesn't seem to be any big score marks or anything in there. The only thing that's putting me off, and I'll try and highlight it to the camera, you might be able to see it there. See that rust around the end there on the bottom? That's what's actually putting me off reusing this. Around the other side, around the top here, there's no rust, but around the bottom there's a fair bit of rust. I've pretty much decided I'm going to get a new one. Now the reason for the rust inside there, I would think, would be that commonly used brake fluid attracts moisture. Moisture, of course, creates rust. So when you see, in your vehicle service book, it says, replace your brake fluid every 2 years. There's a good reason for that. A, gets rid of all the moisture that's in your system, and of course the moisture breaks the brake fluid down, reduces your braking capacity. So I'll go inside now and I'll order a new one of these, and I'll see you guys when that comes in. It's the next day over here in the garage, and this is obviously all dried out now from me cleaning it out yesterday. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to put it back together. I'm not going to use it, but I just thought I'd give it a quick hone and put it back together. So I'll just show you how it all goes back together. It's exactly the opposite of the way it came apart. Like I said, you lay your bits and pieces out exactly the way it came apart, then you get your new bits, you put them next to your old bits, don't get them mixed up, and put it back together. That's provided that it's not rusty inside. You can get it machined out and get a stainless steel sleeve put in it to suit all your new components, but that's going to run into quite a few dollars to do that. I guess you'll have a stainless steel one inside. Don't know how long this has lasted, but you're probably looking at least a couple of $100, I would imagine, to take this to a brake place, get it machined out, get it sleeved, get it rebuilt. So anyway, I'll give it a quick hone and put it back together. So I've just got a 2-stone hone for this. The 3-stone's a little bit big. You can adjust your hone to how heavy that spring is with the little nut there on the top, but it's just a matter of putting stone inside and giving it a bit of a hone. So just with that light hone, that's brought that up quite clean inside. If I can, I don't think I can get a good view on the camera there. But anyway, it's not too bad actually. So what I'll do is I'll just clean that out with a bit of brake fluid and put him back together. Looks all pretty good. So we got that all cleaned and honed out and nice and dry inside. I gave it a bit of a wet hone too, came up quite well. Still, I don't think it's good enough to use, but we'll put it back together anyway. So what I do is use a little brake fluid just to lubricate things up a little bit. Okay, and then you've got your stuff set out the way it came apart. So just assuming that we've got all new parts, put all your new parts together as you've got the old ones. So put them this side of it or the other side of it, so they're all lined up. So just start with all your parts and start putting everything back together. That's pretty much the way it all came out. So first thing was that big rubber seal. I just push that in, I just check it. I think it needs to go down a little bit more. Then went your spring. So put the spring in there. Then went the cap. So just remember which way it came out and which way it went together. So the cap went in like so. Then you had a small brass, very thin brass spacer, which went on top of that. It's all back together. Then you had your plunger. I don't know if you can see, it has a little bit of rusty mark on there from where it had been sitting. I don't think it's so much a rusty mark, but certainly had a mark on it. So of course all these parts would be new that you're putting in together there, and then that cap went on there. A bit of brake fluid on that to give it a bit of lubrication so it goes on easy. There you go, that's in there. Bit of brake fluid for lubrication again. And that goes, you got the little brass washer, you got everything in together. Look, it even spat a little bit of that brake fluid out. So that's good. So then the hardest part here, of course, is going to get this circlip back in. Because you've got, I suppose a vise would be the best thing to do this in. Well, I don't have a vise here, it's down the other shed. Look at that. Went straight in, no dramas. So that's it, all put back together. So if you were going to rebuild this, that would be, you know, quite an easy thing to rebuild really. There's not much to it. There should be a rubber boot that goes on there, because your plunger from your brake pedal goes in there. And then of course you've just got your reservoir that goes on the top. So that's it. That's it, rebuilt, ready to go back on the car. But this one's not going back on the car, as we said. Just rebuilt it to, you know, for that reason. Plus, I'll put that away with all the rest of me spare parts and stuff.